Well, if you ever wanted to know anything about mobile home parks, well, if you're from my neck of the woods, aka trailer parks, I've got the man here, the mobile home park expert, Mr. Glenn Esterson. Glenn, thanks for joining us today.
Yes, sir. It's good to be here, Jeff.
So, most people, when they think about, I'm going to go invest in real estate, they're thinking about going to buy a home, single family home, maybe rent it out, maybe Airbnb, maybe like a little duplex or something. But most people don't really think about mobile home parks. So, I know you've been in this industry for a while. So, can you share a little bit about your journey of how you got into the mobile home park world and why?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it was a while back. I never considered it. Never even crossed my mind as a thing to own. But this was early 2000s, late 90s. I was just out of college. I was working for a .com. They went boom, then they went bust. So then I found myself pretty much out of a job and I just had a baby, had no money. And the thing I'd always wanted to be in life was a farmer. So I went and bought a farm in North Carolina, West North Carolina, in the Asheville area. About a year into farming, I realized farming's pretty hard. It's pretty hard not to crack. Also, not a lot of money.
Hmm.
And I had a little bit of money, just the last few dollars that I had saved. And I started looking around for like little four unit apartments and 10 unit apartments, little things that maybe I could afford somewhere where I lived, which was in the middle of nowhere. It's Asheville today is a lot different than it was, when I moved there. I mean, my grocery store is 30 miles away from my farm, so it's pretty much middle of nowhere. And so I started looking around to see what was available. Couldn't find nothing. And then this realtor guy, he said, "Hey, there's a trailer park for sale. Not too far from you. Would you consider a trailer park?" And running out of options, I said, "Okay, I'll look at it." And I passed on it. It was, made decent money. It looked all right, but I didn't know nothing about it, so I passed on it. 6 months went by and I still hadn't found nothing. This realtor called me back. He's like, "Are you sure this guy will give you financing? He'll make it work." I said, "No, geez, okay." So I went and bought this little park, little 40 something space park, and in Eastern Tennessee, still knowing nothing about parks. And it was all rentals, meaning that the park owned all the homes, and it was on well and septic, and it was like everything you don't necessarily want to buy on your first deal. It's exactly what I bought. Small town, private utilities, park owned homes, no management, gravel roads. It was pretty much the opposite of what I would recommend buying. And I own that. And the first year was great. The owner financed it for me. It was like 10% down, got this thing, humming. First year was great. Not too many issues there. But the second year, as soon as I, tried making any changes there, and the seller financing needed to get repaid. So I had to go find another loan. That changed the dynamic on how this thing operated for me significantly. And I started losing money. And then my tenants started moving out. And, my rents were $75, by the way, for that's
Jeez.
that's where these things were. So you
Wow.
taking rents to $100 to us seems like no big deal, but to my tenants it was a lot to ask. 25% rent increase in their mind. In my mind, is $25. Buy one less 12 pack of beer or something, and you'd probably be fine. And didn't work out that way. But over the years, I kind of starting to get the hang of it, but I was never making money at it, but I wasn't losing money. Farming was actually, my mainstay, and the trailer park supplemented my farming income. And then the recession hit, and things just started going sideways everywhere. Everything was problematic. I wasn't screening my tenants proper, and I just had crackheads and riffraff and all that kind of stuff in there. Um, Eventually, I pretty much evicted everybody from the park. It was real tough time there for a year or two, and the cities were cracking down and forcing me to go from septic into the city sewer system, which cost a fortune. And all the things that these horror stories that you'll come to learn about in this industry if you're an owner long enough. So in 15, I sold. I finally got it right, made some money, and what I realized while I was doing it was don't own the homes, sell all these homes. I literally was giving away homes for free and just moving their $75 lot rent up to $100 or $150 or $200. Or by the time I sold the park, everybody's plus or minus $200 15 years later, you know.
Hmm.
Um, and you know, that's that. My life got a lot easier, a lot easier at that point. The maintenance was finally done. The tenants were done. I had a manager in place, and it was finally working for me like it was supposed to. And I had started broker. I had moved off the farm at this point and started brokering deals. And I'd been brokering. I got my license in 2000 or so, but I hadn't brokered a lot until during the recession. But after recession, I said enough with the farming, enough with the park ownership. I'm going to start brokering these parks, and that's essentially what I've been doing from there. So I divested my park finally, got my money back, and then for the last however long, I've just been, you know, brokering deals left and right. And, you know, we've done probably $1 billion in mobile home park sales in the last, you know, 3 years ish. And we do 100 plus parks a year. And, you know, we've, you know, been very active and somehow over the years become one of the top teams in the country. And so now I work for a public company called Marcus and Millichap, and then I have a bunch of other companies that I own and operate that support the mobile home park industry from different angles, like tenant screening to accounting to education to brokering, et cetera, advisory consulting, things like that.
So let's go back to your park. You and for just consider people don't know anything about mobile home parks, whatever. You kind of mentioned about two types of homes. Can you explain a little bit to them about that and how that works? Maybe the pros and cons of both.
Yeah. So the logic when you don't know nothing is, oh, it's like an apartment building, okay, but it's made out of metal, this little rectangle, okay. But if you own that home, we call them a park owned home, okay.
Okay.
And if you don't own that home, but the tenant who lives in that home owns the home and rents the land from you, okay, we call that guy a tenant owned home.
So they have to physically bring in their home and set it up.
In a perfect world, but it almost never happens that way. Most of the time, the home's already there. Either you, as the owner, have bought a home from the manufacturer, got it brought in, and then sold the home for the
Hmm.
tenant, um, or they bought it from another tenant in the park, or you know
Hmm.
something like that. You know, very rare to see tenants dragging around trailers into parks. It's not really a thing. You
And
know,
my business partner and I recently bought a home here in Louisiana, a park, and we were excited because there was 49. They were all tenant-owned homes,
Mhm.
and but you and I know what that means and the pros and cons. So I just wanted you to
Yeah.
kind of explain that to
So
them.
So with the park owned home, when the landlord, you the investor, owns the home and you put a
Hmm.
tenant in there, it kind of is like an apartment, except unlike an apartment, it falls down every day. Okay. And you know, the tenant is they're typically pretty tough on these homes, especially these older homes, and all the maintenance that goes into them. You know, the additional taxes, the additional insurance. You know,
Hmm.
there's just a higher expense cost on these things, and there's two rents in play when you have a park owned home rent. You have the lot rent, okay, which is for the dirt, and then you have the home rent, which is for the home.
Hmm.
Together, most landlords just call it rent, okay? But keep this in mind, there's two pieces of the equation. So let's say the rent is $1,000. Maybe the lot rent for that market is $300 or $400. Okay, so that's $300 or $400 towards lot rent. That might be what the tenant-owned home tenant is paying in your park. Okay. Now the home rent is really only call it $600, $700. So that's call it $7,500 a year in revenue from that one trailer. So most tenants that are renting only stay in the home for about 2.5 years, and that's if you did good with them. You know, at my park, I could barely keep a person in there for more than a year. And what happens is you have 2 years of revenue, so say $15,000, and this home's probably only worth $10,000 anyways. But now what you're going to do is have to go put in once this tenant moves out. Guaranteed, you got to do floors, walls, and paint and fixtures and, appliances, HVACs. Guaranteed you're going to have to do some annoying stuff. It's probably going to eat up most, if not all, of that $15,000, especially in today's world where it's like hard to find a contractor, everything's more expensive. So that profit actually just disappeared. Okay, what you thought was cash flow actually should have been going into a bucket for reserves. And most people just don't make this connection because they're not thinking of the full timeline on these homes. So these homes, they depreciate like a car, they
Mm-hmm.
wear down like a car, but they cost like a Ferrari to repair. Okay, like they just keep, it builds up, and the older they get, the more expensive it gets. So not like an apartment, you have to think. It's because the unit, you don't just, bring it right back online, and boom, it's done. It's like just a different animal. If you own the home. Now, if you don't own the home and you just have tenant-owned homes there, you're responsible for very, very little, very, very little. You're responsible for what's really at the ground and below. So maybe your water meters, your water lines, things like that, your sewer lines, very, very, very low cost. You're responsible for your general liability insurance in the park, the taxes on the real estate, but not on the personal property, which is what park-owned homes are, is chattel, personal property, not real property. So I mean, there's some caveats to that, but that's the general view on these things. So your lot rent that's only getting $300 or $400 a month, say $300 a month, probably only has somewhere between a 20 and a 30% expense ratio on it. So much more profitability on it. Now, if you're in a state like New York where taxes are crazy, your expense ratio is going to be higher. But like in Louisiana, you guys operate dirt cheap in Louisiana. Taxes are low, and as long as you're not in a flood zone, insurance isn't so bad, and you have cheap utilities and stuff like that, depending on where you are, I guess. So guys in Louisiana we see often on their lot rent parks that have no home rentals and just tenant-owned homes. We typically see their expense ratios hovering around 25% expenses. Okay, which is pretty great. Here in North Carolina, you're going to hover more around 35%. Okay. In New York, you're going to hover more around 45%. Okay. Um, but that is much more profitable. And so the lenders have learned this, that all the lenders in this industry have been burned now a few times because they've capitalized all that income from that rental unit and then realized that when things turn or get too heavy or too far out of whack, they don't get to recover as well. So we no longer, for maybe the last 15 years or so, really 10 years for sure, no longer capitalize both sides of the income chain. We are really only capitalizing the lot rent side, and we're essentially throwing out the revenue from the park-owned home side because your average year over year maintenance on a park-owned home is maybe 30, 40, 50% of the revenues, but then you're going to have your turnover on them. And like we discussed, now all of a sudden, maybe you broke even, likely you lost money. So the banks don't want to do that. You can get a separate loan on the homes. So when you're buying a park, now you get two different loans most of the time, a loan on the land and a loan on the chattel. The chattel loans are pretty expensive, 9, 10%. And, the loan on the park, 6, 7% right now. It used to be 3 or 4% last year, or not last year, but 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So it has better leverage, it's safer. So the goal is that as an owner, if you buy a rental park, is to get those rentals off your books, move that money over to the lot rent side of the equation, the rental, the not the home rent, but the land rent, the tenant owned side. And that's where real profitability comes from. That's when all of a sudden, once I sold all my homes at my park, and some of them I was selling for like $100, okay, just like giving them away,
Mm-hmm.
okay, just to get it off, so I can move this rent from $100 that was the lot rent before. Maybe the house was renting for $300, okay, to now I'm getting $200 on the park cap on the side that's getting capitalized. And I don't have that extra money, but I'm not losing anything on maintenance anymore, taxes, insurance on that home. Now I've just doubled the value of my park by just doing that, by giving away homes increasing the rent to less than they were paying before from a rental standpoint, but more than what the lot rent portion was. Now the bank's giving me a 2x on my evaluation when they loan to me. So it sounds bananas, I know, and people have a real hard time understanding why on earth that could even make sense. But that's just how it is, and you have to pay attention to that. And so the more stable the deal, the more lot renter of a deal, the more better located of the deal, the more public utilities, the less vacancy, all these kind of things. All of a sudden, you can get a deal now that even agency lenders will finance and be very turnkey for you. You'll be able to find management for you, and you'll get a typical return in the market. It's not necessarily you walk into a 10 cap day one on a beautiful place you'd let your grandma live in kind of thing. It's like, no, you're going to pay a 5 cap or a 6 cap. But now what you have is something we have that no other industry has, that I can tell, at least for low income housing options, is we have the most spread between current lot rents and where they should be based on where 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom apartment rents are. So there's a delta that's massive. So once you have an apartment, you know what you can get and what you can't get, because everybody else is doing it right around you. And if vacancy's high in the area, rents are going to trend down. If vacancy's low in the area, you're probably going to stay flat to start maybe getting 3-5% kind of bumps here. Rents, like you see often, will go from $100 to $200, $200 to $400, $400 to $500. As the apartment rents are going from $1,000 to $1,500 to $2,000. So we have a lot more room to climb, and that gives you a much higher valuation. Plus, your cash flows start at 5% now, and now all of a sudden you're at 6%, 7%. Eventually, in a couple of years, you had 10% return on your property. Then the next best thing about it is that we have more accelerated depreciation on the table for our industry than compared to an apartment building. Okay, now 2 years ago was even better. Okay, and it was 100% recapture. Last year, 23, this year is 80% recapture. It's about to fall off now. It goes to 60%. It's a little less attractive, but still whole lot of money to go in. The typical guy that's doing a deal is getting most of his down payment back through accelerated depreciation. And that's, I think, something not many people can say for their, like, I own office buildings and some other stuff. I wasn't able to do that on those things, so,
Right.
it's just better, not an accountant, and I'm not a tax, professional, et cetera, but what I would say is we have better options for, helping with, recovering some of this income through taxes. And it's helpful, when you can recover your, de-risk your deal through the accelerated depreciation from the capital that you have at work. That's very helpful. And if you have, if you're a high earning professional that doesn't, that needs to offset some income, this is a good opportunity to do that on these higher end deals, because you can buy them turnkey, you can buy them, well located, something that if your kids or your parents went and saw, they wouldn't be embarrassed that you owned it, kind of thing. They just cost more in the beginning, but the below the line advantages are still very there, and the rent growth is still very there. So from a long-term play, it's mailbox money eventually for you. Not everybody gets it there. And that's where most people get lost in the deal. It's like they buy something too hard and heavy in the beginning that probably never would have become a mailbox deal, but they're chasing double-digit cap rates, thinking that made sense because they're capitalizing all the income in the deal. And like I said, we don't capitalize all the income. If the apartment guys love to screw up and come in and buy a park-owned home deal thinking it's like an apartment, and they're like, "Oh, we got such a great deal on this thing," and it's just like a year later they call me and they're like, "How did this even happen to us? I don't even understand." I was like, "Well, exactly what I just described." So
Yeah. So for you kind of mentioned the high earner. So if somebody out there right now is busy, physician, dentist, attorney, making a lot of money, getting killed in taxes, and they want to get into real estate, maybe they're interested in mobile home parks, kind of
sure,
give that person out there maybe some kind of guidance on kind of where to start. What
sure.
would you recommend?
So, being an owner operator is extremely hard in this
Okay.
business. Okay. It's like extremely hard. Now, I think everything in life is pretty hard once you get up to a certain level with things, right? Like making money's never easy. But I'm telling you, it's really, really hard over here. Okay. And yes, there's plenty of money to be made, but it's really, really hard. And a lot of guys don't make it. Right. Now, if I'm a dentist, if I'm a lawyer, I don't think I'm trying to operate a park. I think that sounds like a nightmare to me. All right. So I'm trying to find something turnkey, okay, that I can just
Yeah.
buy for the tax advantages and the future rent growth, turn it over to a management group and let them do it. And yes, I'm not getting rich on the cash flows day one. It's just not going to happen. Okay. But at least I'm not being distracted from my primary income. The
Right.
next best option, maybe you don't have, maybe you have millions of dollars and you're ready to go buy a $10 million park with $2.5 million down or whatever it is, maybe you're not, maybe you only got $250,000 to put down. So the next best option is not buy a smaller park necessarily, because usually the smaller the parks, the uglier they get, the harder they are to run. Okay, not always, just caveats to all of it, and we can talk about that too. But typically, that's how it goes. So you might just want to consider being an LP. I'm an LP in a lot of things, and I can tell you, for me, it's the best position because I have to do nothing except yell at people and congratulate people. It's very, very easy. It's very, very easy. I give you a pile of money. You send me back monthly cash flows. I wait 2 or 3 years for the eventual payout. Maybe it's 5 or maybe it's 10 years, whatever the deal was that was struck. Typically, you're getting your capital returned though in the first 2 to 3 years, and you're getting 6, 7, 8, 9% pref, and you're still also getting the pass-through tax advantages too, which is phenomenal. And then you're playing with the upside in the deal as well. And all you have to do is just wag your finger at somebody when they're not doing a good job. You don't have to take any of the hit yourself,
Right.
but you're not going to make as much as the GP on that deal. Okay, but time value headache. I mean, depends on what you are and what you do. I had very little time left in with my hours of my day. I have zero room for headache. I already got 3 kids, a wife, and all these businesses. And so what I have is, really the value side to me. I don't need, home runs. I need solid base hits, but I need zero headaches. So for a guy like me, an LP position is a fabulous position to be in. If you can find yourself into 100 LP positions at $100,000 a piece over 10 years, I think you're going to be doing just fine. You
So
know,
is that something that your group offers, LP positions, or like how would
I mean,
somebody like that
we're
find
happy to make introductions and we're happy to kind of point in some right directions. We haven't formalized anything from a service that MHP Expert does for rounding up all the LPs to go into deals. It's something that's on our table, but we haven't really
it? Hmm.
formalized that yet. And quite frankly, I don't like being responsible for other people's money. And if I'm telling you something, just assume I'm still a stranger to you, and you still got to go do your own due diligence and check out
Yeah.
your own stuff. But there's usually 3 to 5 groups I recommend a lot of LPs to if I think they'd be a good fit, depending on what they have. But to get started in this industry, you really need at least a full year. If you're going to be an operator, at least, and take it by the horns and be like, I'm going to master this thing, you really need at least a year of just runway. Okay. Like from ownership, like knowing that, your job income and all that stuff, if it stays in place, fine. But if you're jumping out of a career and doing this full time, no, it's going to take a hot minute before you start seeing profitability, even if you're buying something that on paper on day one looks to be profitable. And I would argue that baby stepping into deals on your first deal when you're an operator is so much smarter than jumping into the deep end on this one. Buy your best located park. Number one rule of real estate always has been, always will be, is location, location, location. Okay, it's better to buy a smaller park. This is now what little differs from what I was saying a second ago. It's better to buy a smaller park in a very well located area
Hmm.
and just pay the piper on what it costs to get there, because it's going to be closer to you. It's going to have instant resale value. You're going to be able to exit easier strictly off of the location. And then the next things I'm looking for is, turnkey, quality, capex, and financeability. Okay. So if those other factors come in, then I worry about profitability. Okay. The profitability of a deal on my first deal, I don't care so much about some, it's like going to, to doctorate school or getting a master's. You're paying to get this lesson, this next 1-2 years of a lesson. So don't worry about the profit. The more profit that's usually in the deal on day one, the more BS you're going to have to deal with, and probably aren't going to harvest all that profit. So buy the turnkey, best located management, in place, financeable deal that cash flows 1.25 DCR on day one, no problem. But from there, learn how to grow, modestly and correctly. Don't buy a park that's half vacant and then say, I'm buying it at a 10 cap and it's half vacant. If I fill it up, it's going to be a 30 cap. It's going to be the greatest, easiest thing I've ever done. Good luck to you, bro. Like there's a few guys that do it regularly, but only a few that I know of.
Yeah.
It's
So,
really
in
not.
that situation, somebody, let's say somebody's out there and they're a dentist or physician, and they got a couple $100,000 sitting around. I mean, a lot of these private equity companies are buying up dental practices left and right. So
Yeah,
they're getting seven-figure checks, and
yeah.
they're coming to me and going, Jeff, I got this check for whatever, 2-3 million. I don't want to stick it back in the stock market, but I want something to where, because that's their livelihood, that's what they kind of got to live on. So they want to be able to go and take that money, but they want to be a little more involved because now they're not really practicing. So what
Right.
you were just talking about, trying to find something that's turnkey, passive income machine, is that something that your group can help them find and
Oh,
that's already
certainly we
management
do.
in place?
Yeah, that's certainly something we do. Like I said, we sell a lot of deals. We broker more deals than most people you ever meet, and we're national. We probably put flags in 35 states or something by now, and we can help you find the deal. We can put you in touch with the right management groups, put you in touch with the right financing groups, put you in touch with all those type of people. Um, but again, if it was me doing my first deal and I just sold my dental practice, I'm probably not trying to buy myself a job. And I'm
Yeah.
probably not trying to jump into the deep end of some trailer park with gangbangers and crackheads and all that kind of stuff. So, an LP position is a good entryway into operations. Okay. So you go and give the 250 or, 2.5, whatever it might be that you have, to a qualified group that that we might recommend, or that you heard through the grapevine's a good group, or maybe it's your sister's brother's husband's thing or whatever. And those guys, most of them are very transparent. Most of them want to teach you and are excited about what they're doing, and you can learn kind of on the fly with them as an LP. So when you're ready to move into your deal, you can do that with them. But really, the LP position is a really great position to get in for most professionals, because
Yeah.
it doesn't occupy your day. Like in each of my LPs positions, I mean, it's maybe a few hours a month of effort that I have to put into it, and it's
Hmm.
probably more effort than I need to put into it. So for most people, that's a good way to go. Operations, you're buying yourself a job. 100% 40, 60-hour weeks, 100% guaranteed you're buying yourself a job. Um, but if you want, that's what you want, then, more power to you.
Yeah.
Uh, but somewhere in between might exist, but on your first deal, it's just hard. So you pretty much want to buy a park that has management sticking around, that their costs, that the park's already stabilized. There's no heavy lifts to do. You're not going to have to replace your roads or utility lines or anything crazy right out the gate anytime soon. But you're not going to get a great return. You say, "Oh, I'll get a better return in the stock market. I'll buy T-bills with this kind of return." Okay, go buy T-bills. Go do that. I mean, I don't know. I'll help you with that. Like from what I'm saying, like yield has to fall off of your mindset as your primary goal in the beginning, especially if you're coming from another professional industry.
Yeah.
It's a learning curve.
That's the exact path that I took. I'm in over a little bit over, I think, 30 deals now as an LP, and have been able to network with the general partners and learn the ropes. So now I'm starting to transition out of my practice into more of an active role, just because I like doing it.
Yeah.
It's not, and like you said, it's not for everybody, but I really like it. I like learning the different aspects of it and learning my strong points, which is mainly education. And then if people want to invest, bringing those people into the different general partners, kind of like,
Sure.
sort of like what you're doing too, educating.
It's,
So,
it as you grow, you start seeing new horizons,
mhm.
and then you start having new belief in your abilities, right? And so then it's fine. When you're new, you're just too ambitious most of the time, and you have too much butterfly chasing nonsense in your head, So for most people in the beginning, they're too ambitious, but they're too ignorant to know that they're being too ambitious, and that's where they lose. So like what the process that you just described is exactly what I would describe. Is start off with some LPs, learn the business, spend a year or two, then say, okay, I'll buy a perfectly well located, stabilized deal right in my backyard, $1 million or whatever, small deals you can kind of like not lose too hard if things go sideways. Then you buy the $2 million park with 25% vacancy. Then you buy, the park that's a little bit more upside and et cetera. Eventually you can be some of these guys that are buying these vacant parks or these 20% occupied parks and turning these things in. Like we just sold a park in Kentucky maybe 3 years ago for like 3 million, somewhere around 3 million bucks. And then we sold another park pretty close to that, like for 2 million bucks, right? 2 years later, these were vacant parks. 2 years later, we exited this guy out $17 million. Okay, it was
Wow.
this year. It was beginning of this year.
Hmm.
And so, like, yes, that happens. Okay, that guy is not somebody I've seen replicated too often, though. Okay, um, so I wouldn't set those expectations. Typically, what you're going to get is a 3x on your money, maybe a 5x, probably a 20 to 30% IRR when it's all said and done. On the higher quality stuff, maybe a 15 to 20% IRR because maybe you didn't have as much upside to do there. So at the end of the day, you can make your money almost anywhere in any industry. I invest in self storage as an LP. It's like the easiest money in the world I make on that one. Like
Hmm.
that one's easy. I don't do anything. So it's like, well, why wouldn't you just do that? Well, it's not really what I'm like into. So I don't want to develop the self storage. I don't want to deal with that stuff. It's easy money this way. So to me to get the same return, busting my butt, building out a park and doing all the maintenance, doing all the management, and coordinating all the people just to get a slightly better return might not make sense for me, and so I own an office building that um, that was very easy for me. It was a vacant building. It was perfectly well located. I knew worst case scenario if I need to get out, I could sell it. This year started happening. It looked shaky out there in the office world. I decided in September I'm selling this thing. By November 1st, I was closed and made my money. Same 20% return everybody else is making on their stuff. So time, value, and headache first and foremost should be your mindset getting into this industry if you're a high earning professional, in my opinion.
I like that time, value, and headache for
Yeah.
sure. Well, Glenn, it was an honor speaking with you today. If people want to learn more about you and you mentioned several different companies, where can they find you?
The easiest place to find me is themhpexpert.com.
Okay.
That's my main website. And from there, you can jump over to the accounting or to the brokerage or to, some of the other stuff that we do. But if you Google Glenn Esterson and mobile home parks, you'll find enough about me, I have a feeling.
And we'll
You
we'll,
can
we'll put your we'll put that link below this video. And what was the other ones too?
We have EstersonMHCteam.com, and that's
Okay.
pretty much our brokering. We have the MHP Accountant,
Okay.
which is an accounting services for bookkeeping, taxes, etc. Full service accounting firm. A handful of other ones. If you just want to ping me through the website, it comes directly to me. And if you call me or text me, I'm usually going to respond pretty quickly. And we're here to help. We're here to people not get over their skis. We're here to help, kind of teach an ethical, responsible way of investing in this. It's the lowest end of affordable housing. So like you have to be mindful about it. Some people think capitalism is do whatever you want. Fine, no problem. Do whatever you want. Some people think capitalism should be handled socially and responsibly. that's, I think there's a fine line between the two, so we kind of preach sort of those lines about how proper ownership should look like. I mean, you throw our advice out the door if you don't like it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um,
That makes me
we put
accountable.
out a book. We have this book behind me. All you guys can go buy it. I don't know if you can see it, but it's called the Mobile Home Park Manifesto.
Okay.
You can buy it for like $10 on our website. I don't know what it costs on Amazon, but we sold thousands and thousands, I think plus or minus 10,000 copies now of that book. It's sort of the entry point for a lot of guys getting into the industry. You can buy that through the expert website. And then there's a master class that we have as well. That's the lowest cost point of education for getting sort of a first grade level of understanding of what mobile home park investing is as well.
You're definitely a busy guy. I'm impressed for sure.
All day, every day.
Yeah. Keeps you going. So again, we'll put all guys, if you're watching or listening to this, we'll put all the links below this video. Reach out to Glenn if you want to learn more about mobile homes because he is the expert. Glenn, thanks again for your time, and we'll probably be shooting another video in the future to see what other companies and businesses you're up to then.
Yeah, happy to talk anytime, Jeff. It was good chatting with you.